So I'm a first-year medical student at McGovern Medical School. We recently got renamed because we had a big donation. We were formerly UT Houston. And today I'm going to be talking to you about Austrian economics, a special passion of mine. And so can I just get a quick poll? Who here dabbles in the dark arts of economics? Okay, about half. So today I'm going to spend a lot of time speaking about the basics of Austrian economics. Some of you may already have had an introduction, but I really made it to teach people who are just starting out. And then we're going to talk about some of the applications to healthcare and policy. So a little bit about myself. I graduated from Arizona State University. I'm at McGovern Med School. As an undergrad, I had stints at various places: Blue Cross, Michigan, CMS, glad no one booed me, NIH, just doing various things. I've spent a lot of time just trying to get different perspectives of healthcare and the industry, and I really think that economics is a great lens to view things through. So what is Austrian economics? It lends itself a lot to free market principles, but it is different. And compared to maybe the Chicago School or other theories, one of its basic differences is in its methods of methodological individualism. So that basically means that it focuses on the individual, and it starts with an a priori truth. To give you a metaphor that might make that easier to understand is, think back to grade school or middle school, high school, when you were studying geometry. Basic Euclidean geometry starts with a priori truths, right? So you start with a point, 2 points make a line. You can have angles and degrees, but the point is it starts from a basic assumption, and that's what Austrian economics is, specifically through praxeology. And this is compared to other theories of economics, which basically are observable and empirical, right? So let's say in statistics, you have a null hypothesis that can be disproven, right? That's more similar to the scientific method. And those are other schools. And so Austrian economics is really the a priori reasoning. And so it focuses on using logic and reasoning to come to its conclusions. And nowadays you can look at a lot of economic statistics and studies, and while those are important, they have a place in understanding how markets work. Austrians basically say that you can always rig the numbers, right? Some things are very difficult to categorize and classify, and so sometimes those statistics can be very misleading, right? So Austrians, they try to base all their conclusions on reasoning from this a priori truth, right? So what is this a priori we're talking about? It's called the action axiom, originally published by Mises in Human Action. I'm going to read it to you because it's very important. It's really the nugget that everything else comes from. Human action is purposeful behavior, or we may say action will put into operation and transformed into an agency, is aiming at ends and goals, is ego's meaningful response to stimuli and to the conditions of its environment, is a person's conscious adjustment to the state of the universe that determines his life. That's a pretty big statement, right? Okay, so this kind of Misesian view of markets is maybe synonymous with how you may think of Wikipedia, where you have a bunch of individuals pursuing their own goals or their own interests, and you end up with products and markets that are something you could never have imagined in the first place, right? If Wikipedia someone tried to create Wikipedia, it would be nothing like we see it today. It's something that only comes from a bunch of individual actors, right? Not some centralized authority. What is Austrian economics not? It is not a political or ethical philosophy, right? The study of economics is trying to describe the world as we see it, as the economic phenomenon. It's not saying what's good or bad. It's not passing moral judgment. It doesn't have inherent values, right? So people, a lot of people, especially in politics, they try to create these economic justifications based on their moral compass. And there's nothing inherent in really the study of economics that allows for that. So that's an important point to distinguish. So just to give you a run through of some of the biggest people in Austrian economics historically, Karl Menger is considered the founder of the school, and he's a part of one of the greatest revolutions in all of history, the marginal revolution. We'll talk more about that later. Von Berwerk, he did a lot of important work in interest and capital theory. Ludwig von Mises, who is kind of the patriarch, wrote Human Action and established the action axiom and praxeology. Henry Hazlitt, who's a great public intellectual, helped spread Austrian economics in the public's eye. Hayek, who did a lot of work on money theory and economic fluctuations. He is a Nobel laureate as well. And so someone like Hayek, while he is part of the Austrian school, he actually didn't agree with all of the methods of praxeology, right? So there is some difference in how they come to these conclusions, but it's still considered the same school. And then Murray Rothbard, who I'm sure many of you know, he among many other things, his magnum opus was Man, Economy, State. Man, Economy, and State, right? Which is a 1,300 plus page amazing thing that every person should read. So I want to start out with a question or a problem. The diamond water paradox, or the apparent paradox, and I'll read it to you. Although water's on the whole more useful in terms of survival than diamonds, diamonds command a higher price on the market, right? So if you go out and try to buy water versus diamonds, diamonds are way more expensive. And the question is, why is that? So if you know, hold on. For people who don't know, take a few minutes to think about it, and we're going to come back to this question after looking into some other of the basic economic concepts. So Robinson Crusoe, who's heard of Robinson Crusoe? So he is kind of the the prototypical most basic economy that you can have, right? One consumer, one producer, using the most basic materials you can find. So in this example, he's stuck on an island, and he has trees, fish, time, all these finite resources, and we can make some assumptions based on this one-person economy. To use these resources, it actually implies private property. And that's an amazing concept from just having one actor, right? The idea that you inherently have to have the ability to control resources to use to your own ends, right? And so, according to the action axiom, this person, Crusoe, will try to utilize these resources to, meet their basic needs and so on. And so they'll pursue certain opportunities. And another interesting observation in terms of resources is, even though it's on this island, there are limited trees and fish, every person alive has limited time. Time itself is a resource. And so when you choose to do a certain activity versus another activity, you're losing time. And so nothing is free, right? You're spending time. And that gets into this idea of opportunity cost, which we'll mention in a second. So Crusoe will seek to satisfy his most basic needs, first of all. And it's kind of a similar idea to Maslow's Pyramid, right? Where you kind of take care of your physiological requirements, and then you can gain a sense of fulfillment and onward. So for Crusoe, what should they do first? Should they fish? Should they gather berries? Should they build a shelter? Right? All these things have different costs of time at the expense of not doing the other option. And so this is a very important concept, ordinal versus cardinal utility, right? So when Crusoe is making these decisions, Crusoe is not saying, I think if I eat that fish, I'll get 10 utils. All right, I think if I build that shelter, I'll get 100 utils. Crusoe is ordering their preferences, right? And so this insinuates that your preferences are relative to each other, and they don't really have an inherent numerical value, right? So ordinal utility is basically, from a moment-to-moment basis, you're ordering your personal interests. Whereas cardinal utility, which is often used in welfare economics to justify taking from one group and giving to another, at the idea that the second group will benefit more than what the first group lost. It doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense for me to say I gain 10 utils from the book, 5 utils from a pen, and so the book is twice as good for me, right? That That's not something that conceptually makes any sense. And so every choice that Crusoe has comes at a cost. We talked about that. And so in this scenario, we'll say catching a fish maybe takes 3 hours. Collecting a batch of berries takes 1 hour. Building shelter, it's kind of hard, takes 9 hours. And so everyone will rank these differently. So let's say Beth just really likes fish, right? So she'll get 4 fish before she does anything else, right? She's hungry for fish. Whereas Charlotte maybe prefers berries, right? So everyone has their own individual rankings of their preferences. And that leads to this concept of the subjective theory of value, right? Which basically says that the value of any product or good is not inherent. It's based on the person assessing if they want that good, right? So back to the fish and the berries, we're all going to have different orders of our preferences, and that shows that something isn't inherently valuable, right? And it's an important note that this is based on your perceived expectation, not on the actual outcome, right? So if I think that the fish will be good for me, or the berries will be good for me, but they're actually poisonous berries, right? That's a problem. I might get hurt. But it doesn't affect the methodology of reasoning, right? Even though it was a bad outcome, it's based on the expectations, right? And so in this fish example, we can observe that there's this thing called the law of marginal utility that basically says as you eat more fish, you'll become full, and you'll like fish less. You'll gain less benefit from eating the fish. And so this is a concept that we can observe with just Robinson Crusoe. And so I want to present this idea here. It's more complex than what's on here, but I want to show it to you guys and pin it and talk about it later. But there's this concept of investment versus savings that you can even still view in one individual. So let's say Crusoe has met their dietary needs for the day and they have extra time and they have a few hours. They can choose to invest that time into doing something like building a fishing rod, which will in effect lower the amount of time that it takes to fish, right? And so every person has, and institutions and companies, if you expand it, every person has this decision to save or to spend. And so in this case, Crusoe can choose to gather more berries, or they can choose to invest into making a fishing rod, right? And this concept expands to like capital goods and markets later on. So, but I just want to point out what we've done so far. We've looked at the simplest possible economy with one person, and we have all these amazing concepts that we can draw from just one person, right? And I think that's incredible that you can get from such a simple scenario and take these ideas and expand them to markets, right? So let's get back to this diamond example. So someone threw out some ideas of why do they think that diamonds are more expensive than water, even though water is necessary for life? Yeah.
Lower supply.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
There's fewer diamonds out there than there is water.
Okay, that's true. Okay, anybody else? Yeah. Okay, so diamonds are difficult to find or produce to bring to market. Okay, great. Yeah.
Each diamond gives a person more value than each unit of water that we drink. It's so much more abundant.
So we said opposite things, right? One person said there's a low supply of diamonds, and you said there's a high supply of diamonds. Is that right? High supply of water. Okay, so say that again for everyone.
That each diamond gives a person more value than each maybe unit of water, because the water is a lot more abundant.
Right, so water is much more abundant. Let's think about our needs, right? If we're starting off, what do we need? Diamond. If we're Crusoe, do we need diamonds or do we need water? Right, that's our basic requirement. And then after we fulfill that requirement of life, we can enjoy the luxuries of life, right? And that's where your idea comes in, that it's about the marginal utility of diamonds versus water, right? The first gallon of water is essential to life, whereas the second gallon is not, right? The second gallon is good, it's nice, but it's decreased its utility because you're already full of water, right? And now diamonds, right? The first diamond will be amazing because you got this awesome piece of jewelry. Second diamond, not so much, right? Because it's decreasing its value. So, So why was this an issue? You guys just outthought Adam Smith, Plato, Copernicus, and John Locke, who are people who did not understand this paradox. And the reason is because they had this thing called the labor theory of value, which basically states that, kind of what someone said earlier, diamonds are very difficult to produce, and since it's so hard to mine diamonds, they must be very valuable, right? And that's basically incorrect because of marginal utility, right, which we just discussed. So, okay, so let's add a person to Crusoe's world. Someone else crash lands on the island. And what we can first observe is that this person, too, is going to be fishing and gathering berries. Maybe they're a little taller so they can reach for coconuts, right? They add a new product to society. They have different skills. And they can benefit from trade with each other. And this introduces a lot more concepts like comparative advantage, absolute advantage, which if you guys have taken Econ 101, I'm sure you've been introduced to. Division of labor and specialization. And this is especially apparent in medicine, where we are some of the most specialized producers in our society. And even medicine has specialists of specialists, right? So you can do fellowships after residency and stuff like that. So just this idea of absolute comparative basically states that even if I'm better at someone in how efficient I am at maybe collecting coconuts, someone else may have a lower opportunity cost. So I benefit from trading with them, and we both, if you add up all the value at the end, we both make it out better. Okay, so I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing you guys to an amazing concept that I'm sure you've learned in any introductory course. So you take Crusoe, who's a man, and Friday, who is our fellow crashy woman. And when people come together and they're interested in each other's products and services, you get prices.
Okay, and this is great that you got 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, it's getting there. Great, thank you. Okay, and so, everyone knows this. These are supply and demand schedules, which basically means that you have different amounts that you're willing to sell for different prices, and then when they overlap, you're at your equilibrium point. Okay. But there's an important distinction here. This is for a given quality of a product, right? So not all products are made equal. In medicine, not all doctors are made equal. Not all hospitals are equal, right? So this is assuming a specific quality of a product. And a lot of times in policy, such as last night, we throw around this idea of quality, and we say, yeah, we want the best quality. Yeah, that's very important, and it is. I want to be the best doctor as possible. In reality, anytime we deliver medicine, there are going to be doctors of varying quality, and it's important to know that. So just keep in mind that different quality products will be for different prices in a completely free market. So there's a ton about money that I wish I could go into, but I'm going to briefly just talk about it here in one slide. Money is a medium of exchange, so it reflects value. The total supply of money actually does not affect the productivity of money. So if tomorrow everyone had twice as much money in their pockets, it doesn't change the overall productivity of society, it just inflates it, right? So money is the subject of supply and demand forces. And so this is a major distinction between Austrian school and, say, the Chicago school. Austrians find no need to have centralized money. Money is just like any other commodity on the market, right? Where Chicago school, with Milton Friedman, they supported centralized banking. Austrians do not at all. And I want to challenge people. You hear this all the time in politics about this thing called a trade deficit. When we trade abroad, basically we get their product and they get our money. They get American dollars. There is no such thing as a trade deficit, right? Money itself is a commodity that's traded. Let's say we traded Chinese. They have a dollar. They have to spend it or trade it, just like any other product. So yeah, so we're expanding this idea to economic-wide calculations. The important thing to know is that prices act as signals. Without prices, you can't have people buying and selling. Yeah.
I know you don't have a lot of time, but I just want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
That's been bothering me. So I'm not a huge fan of this whole a priori reasoning approach.
Yeah.
And in medical school, the emphasis is placed very much on evidence-based medicine because we could have all of these theories about physiology, but the body's too complicated to understand. So sometimes when you look at the actual data, it doesn't bear out what doctors thought would happen. So with something as complicated as an economy, I'm wondering how you could defend just like taking these like very basic principles and then not even like looking at the data to see if they work.
Right, yeah, so very, very on-point critique of Austrian economics. So the basic idea is that there are different ways to acquire knowledge. Science, medicine uses empiricism, right, which is based on scientific method, but that's not the only way. The fact is in science, it's all observational. There are almost no basic scientific truths that we can use to, I was talking with Michael earlier about this, with protein structure, immunology, right? There's no basic fundamental knowledge we know about proteins that can help us come to all these conclusions. The closest thing we probably have is evolution, right? Where yes, there is observational data, and there's also kind of this basic assumption of survival of the fittest, right, to simplify it, that can kind of explain everything. So that would be a similar analogy.
Right, but like, if there's nothing like that for science, why would there be something like that for economics, where you could just take one principle and
So we're not going to be able to answer this, so it's
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah,
You've
okay.
got-
We'll talk
so
afterward.
These are good
Yeah.
questions, and this is a fabulous discussion, and I really
Yeah,
hate that I'm
that's
going to have to cut this off. But I'm
I was
going to
talk about Karl Marx. Okay.
So,
Karl Marx was next. Yeah. Okay.
okay, that's great.